the fearless Photog. Of course, we all remember this character from playing with him as kids loving the He-Man line. He was one of all of our favorites with his ability to suck out a character's weakness and display it on his chest. And yeah, he was an unmade figure, like the rest of the ones in this image. There were quite a few unmade figures in the vintage line. But Fearless Photog has a bit of an interesting story to him, especially to how he was developed and how he was never made as a figure. And he had definitely earned his status as kind of urban legend toy, legendary unmade figure, with fans doing, concept art and what could have been, what he could have looked like as a toy. The internet was just made for things like this. All right, so here's the story. If you're not familiar with it, Fearless Photog came out of the 1980s Mattel Create a Character contest, where fans around the country were encouraged to design their own action figure that would join the ranks of He-Man and Skeletor and the other Masters. Mattel even provided pieces that you could sort of combine together to get you started. I mean, not literally pieces, but images of what different arms and legs could potentially look like for those who needed a little help with their artistic inspiration. Well, one young lad out there who didn't need the assistance of these provided pieces and thought starters was Nate Bitner. So Nate read in his Saturday morning paper about this contest and told his parents, who were very excited because the prize also included a college scholarship. And so he rattled off one of his childhood creations, the Cloud Chaser, who was kind of a Thor-esque character who he thought would be great to battle against He-Man. I mean, it actually kind of makes sense to have, a character who controls lightning battling against a character who transforms through lightning. That actually would make a really good comic book. They should do this. Come on, Marvel, make it happen. Well, aside from Cloud Chaser, who was his first entry into the contest, Nate didn't just stop with one, but created another character that was inspired by an old National Geographic magazine he found that had a spotlight on new medical cameras that were called Photogs. And he thought that was a really cool name, and it just sort of rolled off the tongue, and he liked the idea of fearless because it just combined with Photog well. The problem was he couldn't draw a camera very well, and so to do this, he just pulled out the National Geographic and literally traced the camera right from the magazine in order to create the now infamous head of Fearless Photog. So no art classes for Nate. He was a great tracer, and don't tell anyone watching Chasing Amy. So, without further ado, he rattled off his idea, sent it into Mattel along with Cloud Chaser, and, well, Mattel quickly redrew all of the characters that were submitted by the top winners. In fact, I don't know if I have my facts 100%, but I think Bruce Timm did the art here. So the runners-up, or rather the final candidates to win, Fearless Photog being one of them, and spoiler alert, he won, obviously, had art redrawn by Mattel, and then kids were encouraged to call a 1-900 number because, that was a thing back then, and you could vote for which of the 5 characters you wanted to win. And again, spoiler alert, obviously because of this video, I think it's pretty easy to guess that Nate won. It was announced in the Masters of the Universe magazine that Nate would win the grand prize of having his design created as an actual Masters of the Universe figure. And the publicity tour began. Oh, and by the way, that image earlier was not his actual drawing. That was just kind of a funny drawing I found online. I don't know if anyone has his original drawing anymore. I should note that because I don't want people to think that. All right, so what did Nate win? Well, to say it was a pile of loot is an understatement because this was an all-expense-paid trip to California to oversee the development of a Fearless Photog action figure that was going to be part of the Masters of the Universe toy line in the 80s on that awesome red brick packaging that we all love. He also got to be president of Mattel for one single day and actually got to dress up, wear a suit just like the president, go up to the president's desk and go to conference rooms, and was asked to make decisions about how Fearless Photog was going to get made. And of course, while he was in California, it was a hop, skip, and a jump to an all-expense-paid trip to Disneyland, the happiest place in Anaheim. So Nate and his family, along with getting to spend a day as president of Mattel, got to visit Mickey's Magic Kingdom in California, going on all the rides and seeing all the attractions. And no, this is not a picture of Nate and his family. It was just a picture of a family in the 1980s at Disneyland that I found online. But he did get to go on Good Morning America, and he met Casey Kasem and some other celebrities because, well, it was a big deal. Most importantly, he won a scholarship, a $100,000 scholarship to college. And his middle school, Thayer J. Hill Middle School, threw a huge party for him when they found out he was the winner. They actually had a Nathan Bitner Day, where the whole school celebrated him winning this contest and all of the national publicity he was getting. And the whole school showed out to show their support for him. And he's mentioned in several interviews how meaningful that was to him to have everyone in the school there supporting him as the winner. Well, like all great stories, this one ends in tragedy because, well, all toy lines must end, and the vintage Masters of the Universe line did come into an end in the mid-'80s when sales slumped for multiple reasons. You can see the video here about that. And while Fearless Photog was a great concept for a figure, he was not going to get actually made because the toy line ended. And it's kind of hard to put out an action figure for a toy line when the toy line doesn't exist. It's kind of physics. Well, fast forward to now, or rather fast forward to 2012, when I was brand managing the Masters of the Universe Classics line, which you are probably aware of if you've been following this director's commentary series. And 2012 was the 30th anniversary of the brand. So we wanted to do something special. We already had a very robust brand. It was doing really well. We had a deep selection of characters. One of the things that we thought would be special for the 30th was to recreate the emotional connection of the vintage line of finding figures at retail, of characters you'd never heard of before, and your very first experience with these characters being finding them as a toy first, versus reading about them in a book or seeing them in a cartoon or a movie. It was something very unique about MOTU. So the idea was to do a series every other month of 6 original characters who had never been seen before, and it would be kicked off with Fearless Photog, and then it would finish off with a new fan contest winner. But getting Fearless Photog into the lineup wasn't that easy because, well, let's just say I didn't exactly have the paperwork showing that Mattel owned Fearless Photog. I mean, obviously Nate had won the contest, but outside of news articles and, images on Google, getting to do the figure getting to do him as a toy and include him in classics meant that we had to actually get something in writing saying that Mattel had rights to this character. Well, fortunately, some fan sites put me in touch with adult Nate Bitner. This is him here, Nate Bitner. I think I just mispronounced his last name once. He had recently gotten out of the U.S. Army. Thank you for your service. And he and I were able to connect through a fan site. And I had left a message for him saying, Scott Neitlich, brand manager. I remember he called me back during a Mattel presentation, like an all-hands meeting, and I saw he was calling on the phone, and I didn't want to lose the opportunity. So I very distinctly remember I walked out onto the catwalk to take the call, like on the edge of the building outside, and I'm sitting there on the catwalk having this great call with him, telling him what we wanted to do and how excited we were to finally make a Fearless Photog. And he was great with it. He was great signing over a contract. He actually signed the exact same form that all of the 30th anniversary new contest submissions signed. It was the exact same form, just saying that Mattel had Fearless Photog. I told him there was no more prize money, but he was like, well, yeah, I've already been given prize money and a great tour. So that was, we were able to reconnect, and it was fantastic. I was so honored to get to talk to him. So Fearless Photog now had the green light to move forward and become an actual action figure and finally pay off that promise from 30 years ago. So with Nate's name plastered on the package as the creator of Fearless Photog and a new camera accessory designed by the Four Horsemen, finally Fearless Photog was going to live in plastic. But, well, the story doesn't totally end there. Obviously, it was great to finally get to him, and we used the vintage art created by Bruce Timm on the back of the package. Nate actually noted to me that the colors that they used were not the ones that he intended. He never intended for him to have yellow stripes and blue. I don't recall the colors he said that he intended, But I definitely remember that as part of our conversation as I was hanging on the catwalk, and it was really interesting to hear that those colors, for some reason, were added. Another thing to note is in his bio, and I don't know if fans ever picked up on this, the bio was actually telling the story of the contest. I noted that Photog, or rather Jay, the character, was selected along with 5 other inventors to go to a science council. Well, that was supposed to be a reference to the 5 other runners-up. I was trying to incorporate the idea of the actual contest into Fearless Photog's bio to pay homage to that. And in the bio, I noted that during a battle, he took out, I think, Whiplash and Clawful. Well, these were meant to be placeholders because I had written to Nate, I had his email now, and I said, who are your 2 favorite bad guys? I'll put them in the bio as characters that he fights. But unfortunately, we never were able to reconnect, and Whiplash and Clawful, who were placeholders, wound up in the bio, and now Whiplash is kind of considered one of Fearless Photog's arch enemies because of that. But I really intended for Nate to help write the bio. I sent it to him for approval, but unfortunately, and he has every right to his life and his privacy, and to be as involved as he wanted to be. So I hope he liked the bio. I did send it to him for approval. Some other things he had as a figure was Terry added a lenticular to his chest that actually showed the character running. Lenticular is a 2 image that can go back and forth, kind of like Cyclone had that on his chest as well, in both the vintage line and in classics. So it was a great way to kind of plus him up. That was a total Terry edition, since I don't think the original figure intended to have a lenticular there. There was also a feature on the head where you would move that little hook there sticking out the back, which would make the camera go in and out. And some fans were like, wait, you said no action features. But to me, this was more like Triclops with his spinning eyes. It wasn't, an action feature. It was really just about finding a way to make the figure cool. It wasn't an action feature needing, like a complete resculpt and, to design the mechanism. It was just, part of the head, again, like Triclops. So, yeah, fans were upset about that. What are you going to do? And you know what? It really was about, happiness and making a child's dream come true and finally getting this figure made. And to me, that was a huge accomplishment. I mean, and if you can't make childhood dreams come true, what's the point?